don't have a little tel mic today, so hopefully the sound comes out reasonably good. I'll try to talk loud. But you might have to turn the volume up when you watch the video. Okay. So, all right. So let's walk through some examples. Okay. I want to make sure that we cover the functions material, but functions are really simple. Okay. And so, and your homework assignment this week is really simple. It's just it's a grade converter. So given a number grade, write a function that uses an if statement that translates that into a letter grade. Okay. So the letter grade. So we've already done some of that, right? We've done this kind of those range checks in an if statement. So think of the BMI calculator that we did. It's kind of like that, only you have A, B, C, D, F as your outputs instead of underweight, average weight, and optimal weight and overweight. Okay. So it's very similar logic to that BMI calculator. The only thing that we're adding is that we're using return statements for functions instead of just doing displays there. Okay, so that's the only new concept really this week. And then we'll introduce a bunch of functions that we've already seen some, but also kind of gets you up to speed on where you can look for the built-in functions that are provided by C#. Okay. First things first. Let's work through the homework assignments from this past week. So, what were they? There was even and odd, right? Did anybody have trouble with that one? Do we want to go through that one? Do a refresher. Okay. So let's do it. So let's do. Since I'm recording, I'll do some pseudocode in Google Docs. Okay. And then we'll translate it. Actually, let's not do that. Let's do it. Let's just do the pseudocode in REPL. That'll be better. Okay, and we'll call this week 4 homework even odd. Okay, so if we go back to the assignment says design a program with a loop that asks the user to enter an integer. Call a module named even odd to display a message saying if the integer is even or odd. Repeat the loop 10 times. Okay? So let's do some pseudocode. So this is called for a flowchart, but let's do pseudocode here. Okay? So I'm just going to put some pseudocode right here in my comments of my REPL, and then we'll do the translations. Okay? So what's the first thing I have here? I've got begin main, right? Okay, and so now I have So the challenge says, design a program with a loop that asks the user to enter an integer, call a module named even odd to display a message. Okay? So what's the purpose of my main function? What is it going to do? Remember, each class has one purpose. So what's the purpose of my main function here? To capture the input and send it to the module. Okay, so that's all it's doing. It's not doing any logic calculations or anything like that. So so I have an input section in my main module, which is display a prompt and ask the user for an integer. My processing section is send it to the module. And what's my output section? There's no output, right? Because the output's going to be done by the module. Okay, and then I just need to have that in a loop. Okay, so let's do that first. So my input, so I have a loop, and I'm looping around my input to get an integer from the user and send it to the module. Okay, that's all my main module is going to do. So let's come back here. Begin main. So I want a for loop. Okay, because the challenge says do it 10 times, right? Repeat the loop 10 times. So we know how many times we're going to want it. So we're going to do a for loop. Okay, so I'm going to say for counter equals 1 to 10. Okay, let's see. I think there was some in the documentation. There was some
in the slides we talked a little bit about loops. Where's the loop?
To declare first?
I'm going to come back and declare later. What happened in week 4? So let's see. So let me go back to the modules. I want to go back and check what the pseudocode instructions were. So while loop, condition control loops. Here it is. For counter variable equals starting variable to max value. Okay. So that's, and then we have statements inside, and then we have an end for. Okay. So that's what we've written here. For counter equals 1 to 10. Okay. And Yezra is correct. I need to do declarations, but it's pseudocode, so I'll come back and do those later. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of ignore that for now. I'm going to come back and do that later. I don't have to write it, top to bottom. I can edit it as I go. Okay. So then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, so for counter equals 1 to 10, I'm going to tab in because I'm keeping my indentation good. And I'm going to say display, please enter an integer. Okay. Fix my spelling. And then I'm going to say input number. And then I'm going to send it to, I'm going to call my module print message, and I'm going to send an argument of the number. Okay. And then I have end for, and that's it. And then I can come back and do my declarations. Okay. So here I can say declare int counter comma number, and that's it. Okay. Pseudocode done. Okay. If it gets much more complicated than this, you're not doing it right. Okay. It's simple. One thing: input section, processing section, output section. Just a handful of lines for each of those things. If you're getting into 10, 12, 15, 30 lines in your pseudocode, it's wrong. Okay? Simple, simple, simple. Okay? So now I need to do the module. Okay? Begin module, and we called it print message. Did the assignment say what the module is supposed to be called?
Yeah.
Okay. Even odd. All right, we'll put that up so we can see it. So this module is not called print message, it's called even odd. Okay? So now we have even odd. It takes one argument, which is an int, and it is called, and we'll call it number. Okay, and then I'm going to, and so here I just have an if statement. Okay, if, and we use the modulus function, right? If number mod 2 equals 0, then what? Then the number's even, right? Okay. Did the homework say what to display? No, it just says please enter. Oh, look, it's got this where you have to put in the counter there too. Okay. All right. So we'll put that in. See what reading the problem does for you. So then I can say else, and I don't need another condition on the else because there's only 2 conditions here, right? The number is odd. Okay. And then I can do end if, and I can do end module. Okay. So now I need to put a counter here, so I'm just going to do counter, comma, something like that. Okay. So that's it. That's my pseudocode. Okay. Any questions on that? Is everybody with me? Still typing? See, so when you replay this on YouTube, there's going to be these long pauses in the video. You're just going to be like, I remember I was typing during that section.
No pressure.
I type fast because I do it all the time. If you want to be a programmer, you should type everything. You should stop handwriting.
And go straight to the.
You should take your notes on Google Docs. You should have your laptop with you all the time. You should not really handwrite much anymore at all, because you need to be able to type fast. I usually only handwrite when I like using scratch paper, like I just need to scribble something down real quick so I can remember it. But I don't take notes on paper very often. I mean, it's 99% of what I do is typing. But that's intended so that you can get fast at this, because you gotta be fast. It's the same earlier when we were talking about keeping your hands off your mouse, learning the keyboard shortcuts. That helps you a lot here too. I know all the keyboard shortcuts, so I don't have to use my mouse that often. I still use it plenty, but I can navigate around the text editor without a mouse, which helps. Just the tricks of the trade. If you want to be a good cook, what do? You cook a lot, right? If you want to run a marathon, what do? You run every day. If you want to be a programmer, you got to type and write code every single day. Okay, shall we continue? Okay, so I'm just going to translate these. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to leave out the begin and end here. Okay, and this comes down into my main. Okay, so I'm just going to paste that in. So here's a keyboard shortcut. See, I don't like this alignment because it's messing me up. That should all be indented. So I'm going to highlight those. And what I'm doing is I'm just holding down the shift key and I'm using the down arrow. That's a keyboard shortcut, so I don't have to use the mouse. And then I hit the tab key. Hold down the shift key and move the cursor.
And just highlights everything.
Highlights wherever I'm moving the cursor.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a keyboard shortcut. And on the Mac, if I use the command key. I think it's probably the control key on Windows. If I'm right here at the beginning, I hit command and I hit the right arrow, it goes all the way to the end of the line. If I hit command and use the left arrow, it goes all the way to the beginning of the line. If I hit shift command right, it highlights the whole line. Okay? So these are the shortcuts that you want to use. And then command Z, everybody knows command Z. If I delete something, I do command Z and it comes back. It's an undo function. Okay? All right. So this is our pseudocode here. So now we just begin translating. Okay? So I'm not gonna do my declarations right now. I'm gonna do those in line. Okay? So I'm gonna start here by translating this for loop. Okay? For int counter equals 1, counter less than 10, less than or equal to 10, counter plus plus. Okay? There's my translated for loop. So for counter equals 1 to 10. So in our for loop, remember we have three statements that we use to define the for loop. We declare and initialize the counter. Then we set the ending condition. So the counter is less than or equal to 10, which means that that's the condition the for loop will run as long as that condition is true. And then we have the increment, counter plus plus. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to go 1 to less than or equal to 10, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which is 10 numbers. I could have done 0 to less than 10. Okay, but you just want to make sure that I get 10 in there. And I'm going by 1, so I have counter plus plus. Did you have a question, John?
What you're saying, because you have to put that euro number 1
You can't use 0, can you?
You could have, but yeah. So if you're because I want to display counter in the message, it's more convenient to use 1. I could have just added 1 to it before I displayed it. Yeah, but yeah. So because I'm going to use it in the message, then yeah, it helps do that. Okay. So now all of these things are inside the loop. Okay. My N4 is gone. I don't need these 2 things anymore. Okay. So now I just have to translate these things. Okay. How do we translate display? What does that translate to? Console.WriteLine. Okay. And so here we're going to use interpolation. So my interpolated value is this curly braces with 0. So and then I just need to put a value that it will use to replace that, which is just going to be counter. Okay. So now this is going to print 1, please enter an integer. 2, please enter an integer. 3, please enter an integer, etc. Okay. What's the translation for input? Console read line, and because it's an integer, I have to do a convert. Okay. So, and we're going to input it into number. So I can say int number equals convert dot to int 32 console dot read line. Okay. There's my translation there. Last thing I do is just call the even odd, which I don't even have to translate this. I can just, I'll just take that out. In my pseudo though, that should actually say call, like that. Okay. See if I can get that all on one page, all on one screen for you. Okay. I do. Thank you. Semicolon. Okay, so there it is. So up top, lines 5 through 9, we see the contents of the main module. And then down below, line 21 through 25, we see the implementation of the main module. So the translated pseudocode. Okay, what happens if we try to run this right now?
Put in an error.
I'm going to get an error, right? Because I'm calling that even odd method, but I haven't defined it yet, right? Well, let's run it and see, because I've done a lot of typing, right? So I want to run it and make sure that I haven't made any other mistakes. So it's hard to read, but on the projector, but this says unexpected symbol int, okay, at line 23, okay? So what's happened there is I've left my semicolon out on line 22. Okay, so I can put that in and I can run it again. See what's happening here is I expect to get an error, but that wasn't the error I expected to get, right? So it's telling me that, you know, I'm doing some checking here to make sure I haven't made any mistakes. And even though I'll know I haven't made any mistakes if I get a specific error. So the name even odd does not exist in the current context. That's the error I want, right? So that tells me that my code is syntactically correct. I just haven't defined that method yet. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to copy the pseudo for my even odd number. Okay, I need to change, so it's called even odd. Okay, so now I have to put it in the right place in my main class. Okay, the main class. Remember, everything in C# has to be inside a class. Everything in Java has to be inside a class. Okay. So I have this main class, so I want to declare a new method, a new module. So I want to make sure that it's inside the class, which means I want to get it before the closing brace, for the main class. So I'm highlighting here I can highlight the opening brace for main class, and I can see it's doing the opposite highlight on line 28. Okay, so when I put my cursor there, it's gonna highlight the paired tag. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm inside those braces, but I want to make sure I'm outside this brace. So I want to start my new module inside the main class, but I don't want to put it inside another module. Okay, so I'm going to put my cursor here at the end of the opening block for main, and I see that it's ending here at line 27. So I'll put my cursor there, and I'll just paste my code in here, use my keyboard shortcuts, and do some indentation there. Okay, so this is where I'm going to put my new module. Okay, redeclare module just like the main is declared. Public static void main. Public static void is the declaration. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes when we start talking about functions. We're going to talk about what these things mean. Main is the name, and then you have the parameter list. Okay, so I'm going to declare a module. Okay, so I'll just put my code under here, and it's going to be public static void even odd, has one parameter. The parameter, from my pseudocode, I can tell that the parameter is an int, and it's called number. Open and close the blocks. Okay, so now I'm gonna cut and paste my pseudocode so that it's inside the block. Okay, now I need to enter this. So this line, public static void even odd int number, that is the translated of beginning the module. Okay, so this line is done. This ending block right here is translated to the end module, so that line's done. Okay. So now if I run this, it should compile now, and I should get prompted 10 times for a number. Okay. Please enter an integer. 1, 2, 3. It's not doing the message. It's not displaying the message because I haven't coded that part yet. Oops. And what happened there was I typed something that wasn't a number. Okay. That's week after next, input validation. Okay. But this is working. So it's running. It's not done yet because I still need to actually do my calculation and display my message. Okay. So let's do that. So I have an if statement here. I'm just going to translate the if statement. Actually, look at this. I don't even have to translate it. I can just uncomment it. Change this to a block. Okay? Because in that case, the pseudocode is identical to my C#. Then I need to do a display. So what does display translate to? Console.writeLine. Very good. And I can say the number is even. Okay? I can do an else here. Open and close my block. Console.writeLine. The number is odd, semicolon. And then that's it. So that's all I have. I have two displays, an else and an indif. I've translated all of those. Okay? So those are gone. I run it. Please enter an integer. 12. The number's even. Please enter an integer. 19. The number's odd. And if I keep going here, there's number 8, number 9. Should be the last one. The number's even, and then I get hello world, which is my leftover right line here. Okay? So done. So pseudocode first, then translating pseudocode step by step, line by line, block by block. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the if statement. Can you translate that? Just so that I can understand this. When I was trying to do this at home, I was like, okay, well, how do I attempt to figure out what is even, what is odd?
Okay, so you're trying to, what is the formula for deciding if a number is even or odd, right? So that uses the modulus function, okay? So the modulus function is a mathematical function that returns the remainder of a division, okay? So if I take 10 divided by 5, what is the answer? 10 divided by 5 is 2, right? So if I take 10 mod 5, modulus, which we abbreviate for the word mod, if I take 10 mod 2, that's divide 10 by 2 and return the remainder. So what's the remainder of 10 divided by 2? 10 divided by 2 is 5, right? And the remainder is 0, okay? So I can tell if a number is even or odd because the number is even if it's evenly divisible by 2, okay? So I can use that math to say if the remainder of the number divided by 2 is equal to 0, then the number is even, okay? If the remainder is not 0, then the number is going to be odd, okay? Because I'm doing a mod 2, the remainder is either going to be 0 or 1, right? Because I'm dividing by 2, okay?
And is that what that symbol is?
The percent,
Yeah.
the percent operator is the modulus function. Yes.
For the if statement, if we didn't put else, if we just made that a separate if statement, you'd still accept it? It works?
Yeah, so you could have done just another if statement here, and you could have done if number mod 2 equals 1, then it's odd. That would be syntactically correct and logically correct. It's a little unnecessary because you don't really need that. There's only 2 conditions here, right? So you have it's either even or it's odd, so you don't really need 2 if statements, and else will get you there. But a second if statement would work. It's not quite as concise, but it is logically correct. Okay, so that modulus, that %2, that's a modulus operator. Okay, and we'll use that frequently, really, to determine if a number is a factor of another number. So a number is even if it's a factor of 2, right, or a multiple of 2. And so so we'll use that. So sometimes when you do another place you'll use mod is when you do like the calculation of the ordinal values. So first, second, third. The ST, the RD, the ND, the TH that goes on the end of those ordinal numbers. It's called an ordinal suffix. And the rule for calculating what that is uses a modulus calculation. Part of the rule uses a modulus calculation. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I'm still getting an error.
Okay.
You're getting an error. What does the error say? It says line 33, semicolon expected. Okay, so we look at line 33. 33 is a closing block, so we look above, and it's the semicolon. Okay, does that work now? Yeah, so those semicolon errors, when you get an error with the semicolon, it's often your error message is usually going to be one line past. So here, if I'm missing my semicolon on line 33, and I click run here, my error message says line 34 semicolon expected. Okay, so I come down. The error here is actually on line 33, even though the compiler is telling me the error is on line 34. That's where the compiler stopped because it didn't know what to do. Right, but the error here is actually on line 33. So those semicolon errors are usually a line off when you get it. Is it working?
Yeah. The second time when you corrected me, it was like it doesn't recognize the convert to M32, and I was like, I'm just gonna rewrite it, and it just went away.
You probably had an improper capitalization. Yeah. Okay, everybody have this? Micah, you need help?
Yeah, I've got error on 15, 24, 28.
That's pretty long.
Yeah.
Okay, so the error on 15 is unexpected symbol int. So you're missing a semicolon on line 4. You're missing a semicolon on line 14. Okay. Probably the same with the others. So line 24. That says unexpected symbol else.
So are you just
Compile it again. Let's see what happens. Sometimes you get.
just looking
Yeah.
over?
I use the modulus equals 1, so it's odd. And like where he did greater
Oh,
than
so
or
here
equal to
you're missing
10,
the close
less than or
bracket?
equal to 10. I just did less than 11.
So you've got this open here.
Less than
This is the
equal to
block, and you need to
silence.
close that.
And then putting the two together, I think
So if you look at that,
since we're dealing with
Less than
integers,
Oh,
this is dealing with
you gotta make
integers.
sure you close those. Every
If
bracket
you want
has
to
to
deal
be
with
closed.
integers, then
that's right. Yeah.
Right.
I also,
And then that should do it, because I think your blocks are.
um,
There you go. Okay.
just like,
But now you're starting here minus 1.
like, he left the hello
So,
world.
which means you're actually going to do this 12 times instead of 10.
Instead of 10?
Yeah, so then you can start at positive 1.
Gotcha.
So just get rid of the minus sign. Okay, all right, let's do another one.
Okay, so this one's done. You can find the solution in REPL. Okay. All right, so let's look at another assignment. Smallest and largest. Okay, we kind of touched on this one a little bit in class on last Thursday. Okay, this says design a program with a loop that asks the user to enter a series of integers. The user should enter -99 to indicate the series is complete. What do we call that? A sentinel, right? That's a special value that tells our program to do something unique, to do something different. Okay, so in this case we have a loop, and we're entering numbers. And when we get -99, we're going to stop collecting numbers. That's the sentinel value. Okay, so it gives us a message, to an indicator or a message of some kind from outside our program that we need to change our behavior inside the program. Okay, so what kind of loop is that going to be? Because we're going to go until we get a sentinel. So what kind of loop is that going to be? A while loop. And why is it a while loop? Because we don't know how many times we want to do it. Right? So we're going to do a while loop. It's a condition controlled loop, not a count controlled loop. Okay? So, and then it says, enter a -99 to indicate the series is complete. Display the number of integers entered, the sum of the integers, the average of the integers, the smallest integer, and the largest integer. Okay? So what do we have here? We've got a loop, right? We've got some math. We're going to need an if statement to be able to do the smallest and the largest. Okay, we don't really have a module here, right? And there's no directive to create a module. Okay, so we don't really have a module here. So I don't think I'm going to have a module in this program. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some sudo. So we'll start a new REPL. Here in new REPL C#. We'll call this week 4. Homework, smallest, largest. Okay, get my screen ready so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, pseudocode, begin main, end main. All right, already making progress. Okay. So I'm going to have some declares here probably. So I'll come back and do those. But the first thing we want is a loop, right? So we want a while loop. Okay. So I'm just going to say while not finished. Okay. And I'm using this as a special value. So I'm going to declare a Boolean expression. Okay. So sometimes I'll use not finished, sometimes I'll use keep going. It really just kind of depends on what kind of makes sense in the context of when I'm writing it. Okay? So while not finished, do. Okay? And I'm going to have end while here. Okay? And inside my while, I'm going to have some logic. Okay? But let's go ahead and declare this. So I'm going to say Boolean not finished equals true. Okay, so this is called priming. Okay, Boolean. This is called priming the loop. Okay, because I want to make sure that I execute the loop at least one time. Okay, so I'm going to do while not finished equals true. Okay, so while not finished, as long as that not finished is true, then I'm going to keep doing my loop. Okay, so I have to prime that loop declaring the variable not finished and initializing it to true to make sure that my loop runs at least once. Okay, so this line here, line 4 in my pseudocode here, this is called priming the loop. Okay, kind of like priming a car to make sure it runs, right? So here's my loop. Okay, so while not finished, now what am I going to do? I'm going to prompt for a number, right? Okay, so I'm going to say display enter an integer. Okay, and then I'm going to say input number. Okay, so I'll just come back and I'll just keep up with my declares as I go. Declare int number. Okay, that should probably be integer, huh? Okay, input number. Okay, so this is now my input section. Okay, what's my processing section going to be inside the loop? What do I need to do for processing? My input is getting a number from the user. The processing is to figure out all the things I want to do. So right, so do the work I need to do to calculate the sum and the average, and the smallest and the largest, and check for the sentinel. So I have all of those tasks. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is check for the sentinel. Okay, because if I hit the sentinel value, then I don't want to do anything with the number, right? So I'm going to do an if statement. If number equals minus 99, then what? Okay. Notice even in my pseudocode, I'm creating my closing blocks. As soon as I create a loop or an if statement, I'm putting in the closing blocks as soon as I do that. Okay. So if the number is 99, then what do I want to do? I want to terminate my loop, right? So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to say, keep going. Oops, I used not finished. Not finished equals false. Okay. So now if I say not finished is false, which means I'm finished. Okay, so that now makes my while loop while not finished. So when I set not finished to false, now I'm going to terminate my loop. Okay. Okay, but if I didn't get the sentinel, then I want to do the processing. Okay, so I'm going to do an else. I'm just going to make a couple of quick notes right here. So I need to do something for the sum. I need to do something for largest. I'm just making some notes here so I don't forget. I need to do something for smallest. And I need to do something for average. Okay, those are the 4 things I have to collect, right? Was there something else? The number of integers, the sum, the average of the integers, smallest and largest. Okay. So here I want to. This is not average. It's and then here I want count. Okay. So I need some in my processing section here. I need to have some kind of logic for each of these 5 things. Okay. So let's do them one at a time. What do I need to do for sum? I just need to aggregate, right? I just need to keep track of the sum. Okay. So here I can say set sum equals sum plus number. Okay. Then I can come up here and I can add a declaration for sum. Okay. What do I need to do for largest? So we did this on Thursday. I need to keep track of the largest number. Okay. So here, what I want to do is I want to say if number is greater than largest, okay, then largest equals number. Okay. then I can just set largest equal to the number. Okay? Then I can do indif there. Okay? Now for smallest, it's just the same thing. It's as largest, only it's the opposite comparison. If number less than smallest, then indif, okay, set smallest equals number. Okay?
Go ahead and declare those.
Yes, let's go ahead and declare those. Okay? So up here I'm going to say, I need to prime them though. Declare integer largest. Now I should set it to something, right? Equals 0. Smallest equals 0. Okay? I should probably declare the sum here. We want to make sure that all those start at 0. Okay? Now in C#, when I declare an integer, it's going to default to 0, but I'm going to initialize it just to make sure, because it's important, right? That they start at a known spot. Okay? What do I need to do here to keep track of the average? I don't really need to do anything inside the loop. I can do that at the end, right? I can just divide the sum by the number of integers I had, right? Okay? So I don't really have a step for the average. Now for the counter, I'm just going to say set counter equals counter plus 1. And then up here I can go ahead and declare my counter. Okay? So that will tell me, I'll now know how many numbers I've entered. Okay? And I'll be able to use that to calculate the average. So I'll take sum divided by counter, and that'll give me the average. Okay? But there's a bit of a bug here, which is that if I'm entering numbers and number is greater than largest, what is largest? What's the default value of largest when my code runs here? It's going to be 0, right? Okay, so that means that when if I enter all negative numbers, then I'm never going to enter a number that's greater than 0, and my largest number is never going to get set. Okay, because I've primed it with a 0. I have this possibility that it's not going to work. Okay, so what I need to do there is I need to do an or clause here. So what I want to check, I want to say, hey, if the number is greater than the largest known number that's been entered, then call this the largest. Or if this is the first number you've entered, then make it the largest. Okay, because if I don't know what the if I haven't entered any numbers, what's the largest number? It's unknown, right? It's technically in our code, it's technically 0, but it's really contextually it's unknown. Okay, so the first number I enter is automatically the largest and the smallest number. Okay, so I want to do an or here, and I want to keep track of the count. And I'm using this counter variable to know if it's how many numbers I've entered. So I can just say counter equals 0. So I put that on the smallest and largest if statement, and then I make sure to increment counter after I've done all this work, right? So that I know that this is the 0th number that I'm working on. I don't have any numbers yet, so this is the first one I'm gonna deal with. Okay, so the first time I'm through, then the first number that gets entered is the smallest and the largest, and then subsequent runs, it's actually going to counter is going to be greater than 0, so it's going to do the proper logic. Okay? So then we're done. So now after our end while, we can just do all of our printouts. Okay? Display, you entered counter numbers. Display sum is sum. Display average is sum divided by counter. I don't really need to store that in a variable. I can just do the math in line there. I I can say display largest is largest, display smallest is smallest. Okay, and I'm done. Okay, I can't get this all in one screen with the because I have the font bigger so it shows up on the projector. But if you look at if you go to the REPLs, to my REPL library, you'll be able to see this as we're typing along. So at this URL, so you can, if you need to pull that up in a separate window or something, if you want to keep track of what I'm doing. As I type, if you have that running in a separate window, as I'm typing the examples, you can just refresh that tab, and you'll get an up-to-date copy of what I have. Okay. All right. So I'll give you a minute here to kind of take all that in. The only thing above the while is declarations there, so I'll go ahead and just, that gets you most of the code.
So you don't need to set the average separately?
Here in line 25 you're talking about?
Yeah, so you need to set it either before the display.
I could set it, I could create a variable, declare a variable called average and set it as the content, but I don't really have to. I mean,
We'll get this about.
this is going to work, right? I'm not going to use the average anymore, so there's no need for a variable there. I mean, I could put it in a variable. I mean, I could do this. I could say, I would have to declare it, right? And it would be a real average. And then I could say, oops, that would be lowercase a. Then I could say average equals sum divided by counter. And then here I would just print average, okay? That would work, but I don't really need that variable, so I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to do it in line. Sum divided by counter, okay? But yeah, that would work as well if you wanted to do that. Okay, should we start translating? This is where it helps to have multiple tabs or 2 monitors. Do you guys have extra monitors at home? That's a luxury. Yeah. That's really good. So if you're doing your sudo, you can get your pseudocode on one monitor and your code pad and REPL it on another monitor. Or print it out even, have it on paper as you're looking at it. I don't write much by hand, but I do print out a lot of stuff. So sometimes it's easier to have like a checklist as you're working through things. Okay? All right. So let's see if I can copy this. I'm just going to copy down here to. So I'm going to leave out my declarations, okay? And I'll just remember to do those as I go. So I'm going to take this whole thing. I'm going to change this to goodbye, cruel world. I'm going to paste my sudo in there. Okay. Get some indentation. Okay. So now I can just start knocking out the sudo. Okay. So I need this not finished, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do while lowercase w. Boolean expressions go inside parentheses in C#. While not finished. And there's my block. Okay. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and move that block down to the end just for the end while there. Okay. So now this is all my if statement here. I can delete this statement because I've translated it. Okay. And I'm gonna go ahead and do my declaration here. Bool not finished equals true. Lowercase t. Okay? How do we translate display an integer? Console.writeLine. Enter an integer, semicolon. How do we translate input number? This is a read line, right, with a convert. So I'm going to say int number equals convert dot to int 32 console.readline. Okay, so that's my convert. Now I need to do this if statement. Okay, this is I'm checking my sentinel value. So I can come in here and say if number equals minus 99, open the block, not finished equals false. Okay. And here, you know, does this make sense to you when you say not finished equals false?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because there's another way to do this, which you could use this, you could use keep going. Keep going, okay? Well, keep going equals true. Keep going equals, whoops. Keep going equals false, okay? Not finished, keep going. I mean, you know, so you want to use a little phrase there that kind of makes something to you. Sometimes not finished, it's not finished and I set it to false. Is it? So now it's not finished, right? So now it's, maybe it can get a little confusing, but sometimes keep going maybe makes more sense. Keep going equals false. But anyway, so either one of those works. Let's leave it at not finished since that's what we started with in our pseudocode. Okay. So that's my sentinel. Okay. And then I'm gonna have an else here and a block. Okay. So now I'm just gonna get rid of the pseudo that I don't need anymore. Okay. I'm just kind of cleaning up my pseudo, cleaning up my code, getting rid of the pseudo, keeping it nice and neat. Okay. And notice as I'm doing this, I mean, the code's changing a lot, right? I'm not just typing one document from top to bottom, and I'm retyping statements, I'm typing over things, I'm deleting stuff, I'm cutting and pasting, and then deleting lines. The document's very, very much, you know, a living kind of morphing document. As I type, I'm changing it a lot. So just because I typed a line doesn't mean I'm going to keep it. Okay, I use all that to just kind of help me craft my solution. So I should be able to run this now, right? Okay, because if we've done it right, let's try to run it because I've typed a lot of code there. So let's see if we've made any syntax mistakes, and we haven't. Okay, so we're not done, but at this point I should be able to get prompted for an integer until I enter minus 99, right? So if I enter all these integers and I enter minus 99, I'm done. So I've done one piece, which is this. I've checked for the sentinel value. Okay, so I want to run the code and make sure I don't have any syntax errors and make sure that piece works. Okay, I'm not done. I haven't done the averages and the sum and all that, but I've done that one thing, the sentinel value. So I'm going to run the code and just kind of make sure that it's working the way I want. Because now I don't have to worry about debugging that. Okay, that part works. Okay, so all I have to worry about now is what's inside this else block. Okay, and then I'll have to do my displays. Okay. Okay. So let's do the easy bits. Let's do the counter, the sum, and the average. Okay. And let's do the aggregation of those inside the loop, and then the display at the end, and then we'll come back and we'll do the smallest and largest. Okay. The sum. So I'm just still translating. Okay. I'm on line 40. I'm going to translate line 41. Sum plus equal number. Aggregation. Okay. And I need to define sum up here. So I go back to my beginning, int sum equals 0. Okay. Come down here at the bottom. Go ahead and translate this display value. Console.writeLine. The sum is with an interpolation, comma sum. Okay. Now if I run it again, I should get the sum. 1, 2, 3, 4. My sum should be 4, right? The sum is 4. Okay, so now the sum is done. Okay, so now I can go ahead and I'm just going to take out the pseudocode for the sum. Okay, let me do the average. In order to do the average, I need to do the counter. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say counter plus plus. That means I don't need that anymore. And then here I can say console.write line. I know I'm going fast, but we're short on time. We still have to do the introduce functions. We only have like 40 minutes left, 45 minutes left. You entered interpolation numbers. Okay, and then I can do the average. Interpolation. Okay, now here I'm going to do, in my list, I'm just going to do sum divided by counter. Okay, and get rid of that, and get rid of that. So now if I run this, I made a mistake. So I made a spelling mistake. So this is why I'm running it over, and I'm doing one little piece at a time, right? One requirement of the program at a time, and running it to make sure I have that piece working. So this is line 56. It says I'm missing a semicolon right there on line 53. Okay. Now I get a whole bunch of other errors. Counter does not exist because I didn't define it. Let's try it again. Okay. Now it should work. 1, 1, 1, 1, minus 99. You're in 4 numbers. The sum is 4. The average is 1. Okay. Let's do it again. If I say 12, 18, 36, 99, 100, minus 99. Okay. The average is 53. I'm losing my decimal precision there on my average. Okay. Because remember we're doing integer division in C#. So because both of those are integers, I'm losing my decimal precision. Because in C#, an integer divided by an integer is always going to return an integer, and it's going to truncate the decimal precision. Okay. So what have we done in the past to force this to have a decimal precision in the answer? We put a D, but that's with a literal. So if we had a literal value here, we could say 5D, and so that would interpret 5, the literal value of 5, as a double value. Okay, but I can't do that here because I don't have a literal. Okay, so what I can do is I can use what's an inline cast. Okay, inline cast. I know that's like super computer sciencey, isn't it? Not really, but. So what that does is it's going to cast, which just means to take the value of counter, which is an integer, and it's going to throw it into a double variable. Okay, that's a casting. Okay, and in this case, it's called a widening cast or a widening conversion because all integers can be converted to doubles. Okay, and you don't lose any precision, so it's called a widening cast. Okay, as opposed to a narrowing cast where if I take a double value and I want to cast it into an integer, I'm going to lose something. I'm going to lose that decimal precision. And so this is a widening cast. So in some cases, C# will automatically do the widening cast, but it will never implicitly do a narrowing cast. But this is a widening cast, so it's easy. Okay, so now if I run it again, let's see if we 12, 13, 13, 12, 18, 109. Minus 99. Okay, now I get 29.5. So I got my decimal precision on the average. Okay. Yes, sir.
Because with minus 99 is within the while loop, that's why it's not counting as integer.
It's because it's here. It's in my if statement. Okay, the sentinel value of minus 99. If I enter the minus 99, I'm using it to end I'm using it to set my ending condition. So here I'm not using it here as a number. So I'm not using it in the while condition itself. I'm using it to set the while condition. And if you enter a 99, then I'm going to terminate the loop. I'm going to set the Boolean expression to terminate the loop, but I'm not going to process it. If you enter something other than 99, then I'm going to skip this block. I'm going to skip this block on line 39. I'm going to do this aggregation work. Okay. So that way, so whenever you enter the sentinel, I don't process the sentinel for the sum and the average and the count. I only process it if it's not the sentinel value. Okay. All right, let's do the largest and the smallest. So I'm just going to translate. If number greater than largest or counter equals 0, then largest equals number. If number less than smallest or counter equals 0, smallest equals number. Okay, so that takes care of this pseudocode. So I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to just implement these two write lines, which I'm going to cheat here, and I'm just going to cut and paste. Okay, just for the sake of time. So now here's, say, the largest is largest, and this will be the smallest is smallest. Okay, run that. I've made an error. Unexpected symbol or. This is not right. How do you do an or in C#? You don't use the word or. Duh. It's the double pipes, right? Double pipe. Okay. See, I missed that translation step from my pseudocode. See, so there you go. You know, you've been doing this for 5 weeks. I've been doing this for 35 years, and I just made the same mistake that you probably made in your translation. It still happens. Okay. Ooh, here's a whole bunch more errors. Oh, I forgot to define largest and smallest. Okay. It says the name largest does not exist in the current context. Okay. So it's because I didn't define it. So up here, I'm just going to largest equals 0. And up here in C#, I can do all these initializations and definitions all in one line. I could do them on separate lines. Whatever's easy to read. I mean, this is pretty straightforward. Let's run it again, see if I got rid of all the errors. I did. You notice how I had 2 undefined variables. And I had, like, how many errors was that? That was a lot, right? Let's just comment that out. So when I ran that, I had 6 errors because I forgot to define 2 variables. So I come in and I do 2 variable declarations, and I get rid of 6 errors. So that's why as you're debugging, and every time you fix an error, run it again. Okay? Don't try to fix them all in one shot. Fix one error, run it again. Your list should be shorter. Fix or a different list, either shorter or a different list, right? And so just fix one at a time and run it over and over again. Don't try to fix more than one at a time unless it's obvious what the error is. But always fix that one error and then run it again, run it again, run it again. Okay, let's see. 12, we'll do minus, let's see, we'll do a low one here. So 2, that's going to be our smallest number. Let's do 198, that's going to be our largest number. Here's 56, here's a 35, or 25 rather. Let's do 39. And then our sentinel value. Okay, you're in 6 numbers. The sum is 332. The average is 55.333. Largest is 198. Smallest is 2. Goodbye, cruel world. What happens if I enter no numbers? If I don't enter any numbers, what's going to happen? You're going to get a what, John? You're going to get an error because of this division. If I try to divide by 0, you can't divide by 0. So I'm going to get an error. So if I just enter the sentinel value right off, okay, then I get this error and not a number. Okay? That special value for you tried to do something that's not a number. Okay. If I had tried to put that in a variable, if I had defined double average equals sum divided by counter, then I would have gotten a runtime error that would have said, something bad happened. So what do I want to do about that? Because the largest is not 0, the smallest is not 0. So I'm just going to put another if statement in here. I'm just going to say if counter greater than 0. Then I'm going to print all these out. And notice I put an if statement around that block. So I put in my if statement. I had to be careful where I got my ending block in. And I went back and indented all the lines. Okay? Let's do that again. Because I did that really fast and it's kind of important. Okay? So I want to take these 4 lines, 52 to 55, and I want to put them inside an if statement. Okay? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type my if statement. If counter greater than 0. Okay? Now notice when I open the block, I typed just the open curly brace there. Replit editor put in the closing curly brace for me automatically. Okay? But it's in the wrong place. I want it to be after this line here, which is now line 56. So I'm going to delete it and come back in here and put it after that line. Okay? But I did that right away. As soon as I typed that if statement, I made sure that my opening and closing block was in the right place. Before I did anything else, I did that. Okay? Then I'm going to fix my indentation. So I come here to line 53. I hold down the shift key. I press the down arrow. Highlight all 4 of those lines. Press the tab key once. Now I'm indented. Okay? So now when I run it, if I enter minus 99, it says you enter 0 numbers, and it doesn't do the calculations because they're not relevant. Okay? But when I go back to do some refactoring there, that's what we call refactoring when I go back and change my code up a little bit. I'm very careful to do that just one small piece at a time. I make sure that I keep my indentation clean. Okay, I get my blocks in the right place. I'm never going to run this code with bad indentation. I'm always going to fix the indentation. I'm going to do that first every time when I make a change. Okay, so that is complete for this. Okay, there's one more, but before we do the last one, I'll give you the tip here. The math on this is to use a declining balance. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to declare a variable inside you have your loan amount 750, then you collect your payment amount 215, then you do a while loop and decrement the loan balance, right? And so then you check if the loan balance is greater than the payment, then your payment is going to be the payment amount. If your and then you say loan balance equals loan balance minus payment amount, right? Then your while loop is while loan balance is greater than 0, right? So you've got all that going. We'll throw up some pseudocode in a minute. Actually, let's do the pseudocode now, and then I'm going to do we're going to talk about functions, and if we have time, we'll implement because you've got more homework to do. So I want you to have what you need so that you can get started on the homework. So this is week 4, homework, loan payments. Okay. Let's see, does it say to use a module? Use a loop to display the payment. So there's no module here, just a loop and some if statements. Okay. So I'll do sudo here real quick so you'll have that if you want to see it. So here's my sudo, begin main, in main. So here's my sudo, okay? Display enter loan balance. Input balance. let's capital I input, display enter payment amount. Input, just call that payment, okay? Lowercase p, lowercase b, okay? So now here I'm going to do declining balance. So now while balance greater than 0, I need more payments, okay? And let's see, in the logic, the assignment says I need to print the payment number, 1, 2, 3, 4, so I need to have a counter, okay? So we'll just go here and we'll say counter equals 1 because we're doing the first payment, okay? So while the balance is greater than 0, okay, I'm going to do an if statement. I'm going to say if balance is greater than payment, okay, we can do greater than or equal to payment, okay, then display payment counter is payment, okay. So this is going to say payment number 1 is the payment amount, okay. Because so my balance is $750 and I'm paying $215. My first payment is going to be how much? $215. Second payment is going to be $215, right? So as long as the balance is greater than my monthly payment or my periodic payment, I'm gonna pay the payment amount, okay? Otherwise, so now the else here is that I know that I now have less, my balance is less than my payment amount. So I'm going to say your last payment, payment comma counter is what? Balance. Because that's all I've got left. Okay? End if. And then right before I do my end while, I decline my balance. Balance minus equals payment. This balance, this is the same right here, balance minus equal. This is the same as saying balance equals balance minus payment. Okay? I'll just put same as balance minus equal payment. Okay. And then I'm just going to say here in my comments, the whole thing is a comment, right? Okay. So here, right here where it says balance minus equal payment, that's the same as saying balance equals balance minus payment. Okay. So just so you have that as context. Okay. So that's it. That's all the pseudocode. That's done. Okay. So I'll come back to that at the end of class, and I'll put that back up again if you want to see it. It'll be on the video. Okay. But let's go ahead and dive into the information about functions. Okay, because I want you to see this before we break, so that you'll have what you need to do if you want to get started on the homework. Because I think you're going to want to get started on the homework because it's due the same day. It's due Tuesday night, so we have class Tuesday, and so I think you're probably going to want to work on it. Okay. So, any questions so far? We're going really fast, and I've covered a lot of material. Any questions? So many questions. Any answers? Maybe is what I should be asking. So. It's just repetition. Just keep doing it, just over and over and over again. Okay? Once you get it right, start a new REPL, type your solution again. Okay, just the more code you type, the better at it, the more naturally it's going to come. Okay, all right. So let's talk about functions. Okay, a function is a module that returns value back. So when we talk about in our 3 sections of our algorithms, of our code, what are the 3 sections we talk about?
Input or
Right, input,
process.
processing, output. Input, processing, output. So sometimes we have an input and it looks like what? We do a display and an input. So we prompt the user for something. That's an input. Sometimes the input, when we have a module that has a parameter, the input work on our module is receiving the parameter, right? So that's the input section. What are our processing, or these are math equations, or are we doing something with the data that we got from input? What is the output? So outputs, we typically have been doing some kind of display. So we write the output to the console. Okay, we're giving the output back to the user. In a function, the output section of a function is to send the result of the processing back to the caller. Okay, so like when we call a module, we defined a main module, and then we defined even odd in the example we did earlier. So the main module called even odd. Okay, the module is even odd. The caller of even odd is main. Okay, so now even odd is now being called by main. So even odd can return data to the caller. So instead of printing out a message that says this number is even or odd, it can send back a Boolean expression, true, false, even, odd, or maybe it sends back a string, or maybe it sends back the result of a mathematical equation. Okay, so instead of outputting it to the console, the output of my function is to send data back to the caller. So now the caller can do its own output. Okay, so typically, when we write functions, we want them to have one purpose. Okay, sometimes the purpose is to maybe it displays a menu, maybe it collects input from the user, maybe it does the even odd calculation, maybe it does some math and returns the data. So it always just one function. So sometimes that the input is coming from a parameter, sometimes it's coming from the user. The processing is usually math or some kind of logic, and then the output is either write it to the console or send it back to the caller. Okay? The only difference between a function and a module is that a function returns a value and a module doesn't. Okay? Other than that, they are identical. And you define it when we do the definition of a function. We just include one extra piece of data, which is the return type of the parameter. Okay? So we're going to see that here in just a second. We also have library functions. These are built-in functions that come with the language. Okay? They're there because they're very commonly used and they're there to help save us time. What are some examples of functions we've already been using? When we get input from the user, how do we get input from the user? Console.readLine, right? That's a function because console.readLine is prompting the user for data, collecting that data, and then sending it back to us in the form of a string. That's a function. So we've already been using them this whole time. We didn't even know. What's another function that we've used? We use it right along with console.readLine. It's the convert. Console.writeLine is a module because it doesn't have a return value. Okay, all it does is put data on the console. Okay, so but the convert.toDouble, convert.2 and 32, that's a function. I send it string data, and I get back an integer or a double. Okay, so those are functions that we've already been using. Okay, those are library functions. There's a whole bunch of library functions that we'll see as we go here. Okay, when you write your own function, you have to define the function using the function header, also called the signature. This is the same as when you define a module. When we define a module, what was the signature that we used? We said it's a module, and we gave it the name, and then we gave it what comes after the name, the parameters, right? This is what you need to use for input into the module. Okay, for a function, it's the same thing. We add to that the return type of the function. Okay, so in our C#, we've been typing things as public static void. The void is the return type. It means there is none. So now we're going to say public static int, and then the name, or public static string, or public static boolean. So we're replacing the void with the return type. Okay. So here's an example of the definition: public static int. So public is the scope, public or private. Static is whether it's for a class or an instance. So we're not covering those values in this class. When you get into object-oriented programming, which is probably the first 2 weeks of your next class, you'll start talking about these. But for now, it's always public static. Okay, and then we have the return data type. In this example, it's int right here. Okay, then we have the name of the method or the name of the function, and then we have the parameters int and height, and then at the very last thing that the function needs to do is use a return. It needs to say return width times height. That's the output piece of the function. Okay, and if you want to do displays and things like that in here, then you can. Typically, if you have a function and you're returning some data, you're not going to be doing displays. Your input's going to come from parameters. You're going to have some kind of mathematical processing, a bunch of maybe some loops and some if statements, and they're going to return something. Okay? You can pass multiple arguments into a function. A function can receive many parameters. Okay? But you can only get one. You can only get one. Whoops. You can only get one value back. Okay? So I can pass a function can have multiple parameters. I can pass in multiple arguments, but I can only return one value. Okay? Now, I'm going to talk about function overloading on Tuesday because we need to jump in. Now I will say this, that you can only return one value from a function, but you can return it from multiple places. So I can have an if statement where I can say if something, then return this value, else return this other value. Okay? So I can have more than one return statement in my function as long as only one of them executes. As soon as that return statement is executed, your function is over. Okay, there's no more processing after the return. Okay? So here's some examples of built-in math functions. You get square root, math.square root, math.pow. We talked about console.readline. Math.pow, this gives you the exponent, so 4 to the power of 2. Math.pow, square root of 16. Math.abs, that's the absolute value of a number. Math.round, rounds to the nearest integer. Math.ceiling rounds up. Math.floor truncates. Oop, that should say math.floor. Let's just fix the slides. Rounds a number down.
Does that update automatically for your slide?
Yes. If you're following along, you should have seen me typing there if you were on the same slide. So, math.floor rounds the number down. Math.floor doesn't actually round down, it just truncates. It just cuts off the decimal precision. Although I think you can, in some cases, you can round down to, I want to round to a certain number of decimals, right? So here, math.round, I can use that. I can round, maybe I want to round to 3 decimal precision or something like that. So sometimes I might use those round functions differently. Okay? There's documentation here at this link if you want to look at that. Okay? Here's an example of one that we've been using. Convert.toInt32 takes a string as an argument, returns an integer. Okay? All right. So we're going to cover some more of those on Tuesday. I want to do an example. Okay? I know you guys want an example too. So let's see, there's some exercises here at the end. Okay. Let's do this one. Okay. Design a function called maxInteger that accepts 3 integers and returns the largest. Okay. And we have 15 minutes left. Okay, for our class. So let's do this one. Okay. Let's open up a REPL. C#. We'll rename this week 5 in class function intro. Okay. Get my Tableau set up here. Okay, so now change our hello to goodbye, and we'll just make that the end of the statement. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to write a function. Okay. Now typically I would prompt the user for data, but I'm just gonna call it here. Okay. So I'm just gonna say the function is called. It's right here. The function is called max integer. Okay. So I'm just going to take this max integer 99, 44, 108. I'm just going to run that. Max integer 99. What were the other numbers? 99, 44, 108. 44, 108. Okay. Now I expect that output to return what? 108, right? Okay. So that's my call. Okay, now typically I would probably prompt the user for 3 numbers and do all that work, but for the sake of time, we're going to skip that. Okay, so now I need to define my function. So I'm defining just like I was defining a module, I'm defining my function. Public static. But now instead of void, I want to define the return type. So what is the return type of the function going to be? Takes 3 integers and it returns the maximum integer.
Wait, what was the question again?
What is the return type of this function? It's an integer, right? Takes 3 integers, returns the largest. So it's an integer. Okay? Public static int, max integer, and then I have to declare my parameters. Int A, int B, int C. Okay? Blocked in. Okay. Here I'm going to, we'll come back and do that. So if I run this, what's going to happen? I'm going to get an error. Okay. I'm going to get an error because I misspelled integer. Right here. That's not the error I wanted to get. Okay. So I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to get an error. And my error here says, a little bit cryptically, it says not all code paths return a value. That's what it says right here. Okay? It says in main class.maxInteger, not all code paths return a value. And it's because I said you're going to get an integer back, but there's no return statement. Okay? So I've got to have at least something in here, some kind of return in here. So I have to return 0. So now if I run this, it's going to work. Now 0 is not the right thing to return, but I need that so that the code will compile. Okay? And now I can go back and actually do some logic. Okay? So what's my logic here? I want to figure out the greatest of those 3 values. Okay? So I'm just going to use some if statements. If A is greater than B, and A is greater than C, then what? Then return A, right? Okay. I'll just do 3 if statements. If B is greater than A and B is greater than C, return B. If C is greater than A and C is greater than B. I could probably have done this faster some other way, but this is what I'm doing. Okay? And actually, I don't need this last if statement, right? Because here I know that A, if A is greater than B and A is greater than C, then I'm going to return A. If B is greater than A and B is greater than C, then I'm going to return B, right? Otherwise, I'm just going to return C. Okay, I don't really need an if statement here. Okay? And actually, I should use greater than or equals in here, because otherwise, if I have two numbers that are the same, it's not going to work, probably. We could test that, but okay. All right, so now when I run it, goodbye world. What happened? Did my function run? It did, right? But there's no output, right? So I did processing. I did input. Here, in my main, my processing is to call max integer. My output is to write line goodbye world. Here in my max integer, my input is the parameters. My processing are these if statements, and my output is returning one of the values. But I never print out the result of max integer. Okay, so I can do this in two different ways. Okay, I can declare a variable to hold the answer, like that. Okay, and then I can say console.writeLine answer. Okay, so now when I run it, I get the answer that says 108. Okay. Alternatively, I could have just put that in a write line. Console.writeLine max integer 13 104 104. Okay. Oops, I left out a semicolon. Okay. In that case, they're the same, so it doesn't matter which position they're in. It's always going to figure out the biggest one. Okay? So functions. So right here, this should be, at this point, you should have seen enough to be able to do the homework. Okay? With an if statement, prompt the user for an integer, call a function, send to get the integer, send it to the function. The function does some if statements, returns back A, B, C, D, or F, and then your main method prints it out. Okay? At this point, you should have enough examples from all of the body of work that we've done to get that done, to get that homework assignment done. Okay? However, it's not due till after we meet again. So work on it. If you have questions, then we'll cover it. Okay? And then Tuesday, we'll catch up on the rest of the lecture on functions. And we'll start talking about all the other library functions and all the strings and all the things that you can do with that. Okay? And then we'll do some experimentation around those. Okay. That's good. That's about it. We have only 5 minutes left. So if you need help with your homework or something like that, then I'll stick around. If you have questions, then we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video here.
And we can just get that on your slides.